Anyone with diabetes knows this feeling all too well. You've treated a low blood sugar, your meter says you're back in range, but you've still got this frustrating brain fog that just won't seem to lift. Well, it turns out there's a fascinating scientific reason for that delay, and it's pointing us to a whole new way to think about recovery. So, have you ever had this happen? You're staring into space, you can't quite string a thought together, even though your glucose meter is giving you the all clear. You're not imagining it. It is a very real, measurable phenomenon, and we're going to dive into the science behind it right now. And that's the crucial point here. This isn't just a feeling. Clinical studies have actually shown that even when your blood sugar is technically back to normal, your brain's cognitive function can still be seriously impaired. There's this huge gap between what your meter is telling you and what your brain is actually going through. And get this timeline really shows you just how massive that gap can be. So you take your glucose, and yeah, within about 15 minutes, your meter might say you're good to go. But your brain? It can take anywhere from 40 to a staggering 75 minutes to catch up. That is a huge disconnect, and it's a long, long time to feel off. Okay, so let's get into the mystery. What on earth is actually happening inside the brain during this gap? I mean, why can't it just use the glucose that's finally available? Well, the answer lies in this hidden and, frankly, kind of self-sabotaging chain reaction. First, a super quick biology refresher. Your brain is an incredible energy hog. It just consumes fuel like crazy. And it almost exclusively relies on one process to get that fuel. It's called glycolysis. The best way to think of it is as the brain's main energy highway. It's the road that converts glucose into ATP, which is the chemical energy that powers every single one of your thoughts. So here's the crazy chain reaction that unfolds. The low glucose cuts off the fuel supply, right? That puts the brain cells under a ton of stress. So in response, the brain deploys this emergency repair enzyme. But here's the incredible catch. In its rush to fix things, this enzyme literally devours another vital molecule called NAD+. And NAD+ is the absolute key that keeps that energy highway running. So without NAD+, the entire highway, the one you need to process the sugar you just ate, it just grinds to a complete halt. And this is the absolute key to the whole thing. After you've had your glucose tabs, the fuel is there. The glucose has arrived. But the machinery, the engine needed to use that fuel, is broken. It's offline because the NAD+ needed to run it has been completely wiped out. And all of this leads us to this really powerful new idea that explains the whole mystery. The hypoglycemia brain energy bottleneck. It completely reframes how we need to think about recovery. Let's stick with that highway analogy. Think of glycolysis as a real highway. The low blood sugar event, that's like a massive multi-car pileup. The emergency crews rush in to repair the damage, but in the process, they use up every single available tow truck. And those tow trucks are our NAD+ molecules. So even after the initial crash is cleared, there's no way to get traffic moving again. The road is blocked. Which, of course, raises a really critical question. The standard treatment for low is just to add more glucose. But what happens when you do that in this exact scenario? Well, it's like sending hundreds of more cars onto a highway that is already in total gridlock. The glucose can't get through to be processed properly. And worse, it can get diverted down side roads, creating this harmful burst of superoxide. That's a type of oxidative stress that can actually damage the very neurons we're trying to save. So if the main highway is completely blocked, what if we could just open up a side road? What if there was another way to get fuel to the brain that didn't rely on that main gridlocked highway at all? And this is where our heroes enter the story. Alternative fuels, like beta-hydroxybutyrate, or just BHB for short, and lactate. These molecules are amazing because they can provide energy to the brain through a totally different pathway. They are essentially the bypass route we've been looking for. And you can see the difference so clearly here. The old glucose-only approach gets stuck right at the start of the highway, at the traffic jam. But BHB and lactate, they can merge onto the highway after the jam, bypassing that bottleneck completely. They also need way less of that depleted NAD+ to get to work, which means they can create clean energy without causing all that harmful oxidative stress. It's a game changer. Now, this all sounds fantastic in theory, right? But does it actually work in the real world? Well, let's take a look at the evidence, because it builds this incredibly powerful case from animal studies all the way up to real-world human trials. The evidence is just so compelling. In animal models, using these alternative fuels reduced the death of neurons by a stunning 70 to 90%. In controlled human studies, they helped people get their cognitive function back significantly faster. And now, this science is actually being put to the test in the real world with a totally new type of recovery product. Let's just pause on one of those numbers for a second. In one of those studies, giving lactate with glucose after a severe low reduced the loss of neurons in the hippocampus. That's a key area for memory by approximately 80%. Just think about that. That is a massive level of protection for the brain. And this brings us right to the practical application. This whole body of research has directly led to the development of something called MESH products. That stands for multi-energy substrates for hypoglycemia. And these products combine the standard glucose with these alternative fuels to attack both problems at the same time. So, what's the big takeaway here? What does this all mean? The crucial point is that our entire understanding of hypoglycemia recovery is evolving right before our eyes. We now have a powerful explanation for why that brain fog lingers, and more importantly, we have a targeted way to actually do something about it. This quote from the researchers who did this work just sums it up perfectly. The future of treating a low probably isn't just about raising blood sugar anymore. It's about providing the right kinds of fuel to help the brain bypass its own internal energy crisis. So, the next time you're recovering from a low and you're feeling that fog settle in, it's worth asking yourself, is my treatment just sending more cars onto an already blocked highway? This incredible new science suggests there might just be a better way, a bypass route, to get your brain back up to speed.